Is having low energy a personality trait? What I mean is, I'm a person who is extremely goal-oriented. I'm always busy working on something that is productive and striving to do things to improve my life. Sounds like me. On the other hand, my husband sleeps in always when he can, 10 or 11 a.m., goes to bed late, and if he gets one or two things done on his days off, he will then need a big nap. I get extremely frustrated with this, and it has caused division in our marriage. Is this just his personality or a lack of willingness to change?
That is personality. Absolutely. So these people differ tremendously in their industriousness. And so I've had a graphic example of this since I was a child between myself and Dr. Alan Goldhammer, who is far more industrious than I am. So I'm Alan is like Marilyn, and I'm more like her husband. And I'm not quite that lazy, but this is I would say I'm average. Okay, and so an average person, I don't know, maybe I'm a little more harder working than average, but it's somewhere in the middle of the bell curve. And Alan is anchoring down solidly out there at the 99th percentile. And the difference is clear. Okay, it's very obvious. And so if we're hanging out working on something, by the time we get X amount of progress done, okay, I'm done. Now I'm ready to go goof off, shoot a little basketball, check on the NBA, and go have some good earth tea. Like, I'm not up for anymore. Where Alan's like, okay, what's the next thing we could do? Let's get one more thing done. That's just personality. So, yeah,
you're calling it industriousness, but does conscientiousness play a role here?
Yes. Yeah. But you could be, in other words, industriousness let's try to get clear. What there's genes that build these characteristics. And it turns out that with the 60,000 words in the English language, when they went looking for descriptions of humans, they found 18,000 different words in the English language. What they then did was use a mathematical innovation called factor analysis, and then they found 6 factors. So they found IQ plus what we now know as the Big Five, or OCEAN: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. So what you're seeing, though, is that it isn't that you get a certain amount of quote openness inside the nervous system. It's going to be more nuanced than that. So some people are going to be very open about doing dissection of a frog and are going to be fascinated with the insides of a frog. Somebody else is really open about how they want to go and backpack around Europe, and they want to see all the different countries and everything, but they have no interest in seeing the insides of a frog. So both of those things have to do with the genes that build what we're going to generally describe as openness, but we can see that those people are quite a bit different genetically. So the curiosity is playing out quite differently in those two people. And so so industriousness is the proper word for describing the difference between these two people, rather than conscientiousness, which winds up being the main word that we use to describe a whole class of adjectives that are describing the nuanced issues of individual differences between people in the genre of what we're going to call conscientiousness. So industriousness definitely is close to conscientiousness, but it's not the same. It's not exactly the same concept. And conscientiousness itself is just the best describer of that genre of a couple of thousand adjectives. It's the one that we use in psychology, but it's not the king of anything. It's just a very good descriptor of hundreds of nuanced characteristics of humans. So yes, AJ, you're absolutely right. Industriousness falls under, what this is like? I finally came up with a description. It's kind of like looking at colors in Home Depot for painting your house. It's like there's a group of thing called the browns, and then there's the reds, and then there's the greens, and then there's the grays. It's like, and you can tell that there's 50 different colors of gray. And at some point, some of them start to look brown, and some of them start to look green. And so industriousness is one of the grays. And conscientiousness is just simply the one that you might point to and you say, well, that's the most gray of all the grays. But industriousness is just a couple of slots over from that. It's just slightly different. And so that's how I would describe that. So they're definitely in the same category of the genetic code. But yeah, you could be what I would call very conscientious and still be lazy. In other words, you are really determined to tell the truth. You know what I'm saying? You got actually your bills paid on time. You made sure that before you went on a trip, there's 32 pounds of pressure in your car tires, but you don't hustle. And so that's a great question. But what Marilyn is looking at is absolutely genetic.